Have you ever wondered why, no matter how hard you try, life still seems to push you into difficult situations? Sometimes just being a good person doesn't feel like enough in this chaotic world. The world around us is changing at a dizzying pace. Kindness is no longer always a shield. Friendship isn't always unconditional. And fairness, maybe it only truly belongs to those strong enough to claim it. In today's video, we'll explore 15 rules for survival. Not to make you more pessimistic, but to help you become more aware and resilient in the face of modern challenges. Let's begin this journey together. You know, there's this quiet truth that many of us discover as we navigate through the winding paths of life, often whispered only in the stillness of our own thoughts. It's about friendships, or more precisely, the often counterintuitive idea that fewer friends can actually lead to a much lighter, more peaceful life. And tonight, in this soft glow of the late hour, I want to talk about that. Think back for a moment to your younger days, maybe high school or college. Remember the bustling hallways, the crowded lunch tables, the nonstop buzz of group chats and weekend plans? There was this unspoken pressure, wasn't there? This feeling that the more friends you had, the more popular you were, the more successful you were in some kind of invisible social hierarchy. We collected friends like merit badges, each new connection a little flicker of validation, a quick hit of belonging. We stretched ourselves thin, trying to be everything to everyone, terrified of being left out. And for a long time, I lived like that too. My phone never stopped lighting up with notifications. My calendar was a blur of hangouts, coffee dates, birthdays, and late-night calls. I truly believed that having a wide, ever-growing circle of acquaintances was the sign of a rich, meaningful life. But then, gradually, the cracks started to show. All those relationships, the sheer volume of them, began to feel less like comfort and more like weight. Every new friend came with unspoken rules, hidden expectations. And then came the drama, the rumors, the shifting alliances, the cold shoulders that appeared out of nowhere. Someone was always mad at someone, and somehow I always ended up in the middle, mediating, smoothing things over, trying desperately to keep the peace. It was exhausting. My energy, my emotional bandwidth, constantly drained by problems that weren't even mine. I remember so many nights lying awake, replaying conversations, picking apart passive-aggressive comments, feeling gut-punched by the realization that someone I trusted had been talking behind my back. It was a roller coaster of emotions, a constant giving and often taking. And then there were the obligations, the birthdays, the events, the endless favors that slowly stopped being requests and started to feel like demands. I felt like I couldn't say no. I didn't want to seem selfish or like a bad friend. But over time, my most precious resource, my time, was no longer mine. It was chipped away at, scattered, spent on connections that brought little return. And the more people I knew, the shallower each connection became. We all knew each other's highlight reels, but few ever saw the real, unedited footage, the fears, the dreams, the vulnerabilities that give friendship real meaning. It felt like I was skating across the surface of a vast ocean, never diving deep into the still, profound waters below. Then, slowly, came a realization, a quiet, gentle awakening that grew with time and experience. I started to notice something. The fewer people I tried to keep up with, the more space I had for myself. The less I worried about pleasing everyone, the less chaos crept into my life. It was like someone opened the windows and let fresh air in. My mind felt clearer, lighter, free from the constant buzz of other people's opinions and drama. I started to breathe again. This isn't about isolating yourself. It's not about shutting people out or building walls. Not at all. It's about being intentional, about realizing that real connection isn't about how many people you know, but how deeply you're known by just a few. It's about choosing to invest your energy in people who genuinely see you, flaws and all. People who listen, really listen, and love you not for what you do, but for who you are. These are the ones with whom silence feels natural, the ones with whom you can be afraid without being weak and dream big without being laughed at. They lift you up, not drag you down. They're the quiet anchors when the world feels like a storm. When you have fewer but deeper relationships, there's less room for miscommunication, less gossip, less emotional clutter. There's more time for real connection, time for conversations that matter, for shared moments that feed your soul. You stop juggling social chess pieces and start just being. In that space, something beautiful begins to grow. Peace. A still, steady kind of peace that wraps around you once the noise of expectation dies down. That peace gives you room to reconnect with yourself, to hear your own voice again, to follow your passions without being distracted or compared. It's the calm of knowing your circle is built on trust and understanding, not popularity or convenience. It's finding the center of your own storm and standing firm in it. This isn't some cynical view of friendship. It's a liberating one. A realization that you don't need a crowd to be loved. Just a few real hearts that beat with yours. And while a lighter social life can bring you calm and clarity, there's another truth that often hides quietly beneath our conversations about well-being and freedom. It's the unspoken reality of money. Because let's be honest, this world can be tough. And in a world that sometimes feels engineered to test us, money has an undeniable power. It can solve 99% of our problems. As we settle into the quiet of this evening, after reflecting on the gentle peace that comes from fewer, deeper connections, let's pivot to something that might feel a little less poetic, but undeniably more practical: money. Now, before you roll your eyes, hear me out. We've all heard the cliche, money can't buy happiness. And yes, in its purest, most profound sense, that's absolutely true. You can't put a price tag on true love, on genuine laughter, on the quiet joy of a sunset. But let's be honest with ourselves. Money can absolutely buy almost everything else that makes life easier, more comfortable, and frees us up to pursue happiness. It buys peace of mind. It buys options. It buys the ability to breathe. I remember a time, not so long ago, when money was a constant gnawing worry. It wasn't about wanting fancy cars or designer clothes. It was about the basics. The rent due date felt like an approaching storm cloud. A sudden, unexpected car repair could send my carefully planned budget spiraling into chaos. The thought of a medical emergency, even something as simple as a fever, filled me with dread, knowing the cost could set me back for months. Every decision felt like it came with a price. Should I buy the healthier, slightly more expensive groceries, or stick with the cheaper, less nutritious options? Could I really afford that much-needed dental checkup, or should I just hope the toothache went away on its own? That kind of financial anxiety wasn't just a burden on my wallet, it was a weight on my soul. It seeped into every corner of my life, my mood, my relationships, my sleep. It's in moments like these, isn't it, that you come to truly understand the raw, undeniable power of money. Not the power to splurge, but the power to alleviate stress. The power to take the low, constant hum of worry out of the background of your life. Imagine paying your bills without a knot forming in your stomach. Imagine facing an unexpected expense, a leaky roof, a broken appliance, with a sense of calm, knowing you have the means to fix it. That, right there, is what financial stability buys you. Freedom from many of the daily battles that wear us down. Think about the simple things. Time, for example. When you have enough money, you can outsource tasks that consume your precious hours. You can hire someone to clean your house, giving you your weekend back. You can order groceries online, saving yourself a trip to the store. This isn't about being lazy. It's about valuing your time, your life, and directing it toward the things that actually matter to you, rather than burning it away on chores done out of necessity. And then there's health. Access to quality health care, nutritious food, a safe and comfortable place to live. These are the foundations of well-being. And while we can't control everything about our health, a lack of money severely limits your ability to get preventative care, the right medications, or even just a stress-free environment to recover in. It's heartbreaking to think about how many people delay seeing a doctor or dentist simply because they can't afford it. In this light, money isn't about luxury. It's about the ability to take care of yourself, to protect your mental and physical well-being, to live with dignity. Now think about opportunity, education, travel, starting a small business, pursuing your passion. All of these things take some degree of financial support. Money allows you to invest in yourself, to take classes, to travel and gain perspective, to take risks that could change your life. It opens doors that would otherwise stay shut. It gives you the power of choice, the choice to leave a soul-draining job, the choice to follow a creative dream, the choice to live in a neighborhood where you feel inspired. not afraid. So when people say money doesn't buy happiness, it's important to clarify what we really mean. No, it doesn't buy the feeling of happiness directly, but it absolutely buys the conditions that allow happiness to grow. It removes many of the obstacles that stand between us and a peaceful, fulfilling life. It lifts the weight of constant pressure, fear, and struggle. It creates a cushion, a safety net, giving you space to breathe, to rest, to focus on what truly brings joy, your relationships, your passions, your growth. Think of money like the foundation of a house. You can't live in a foundation, but without a solid one, the whole thing collapses. Money is that foundation for many aspects of life. It stabilizes, supports, and enables everything else we build on top of it. It's not about loving money for money's sake. It's about recognizing its utility, its power as a tool for navigating the complexities of our world. Financial security offers something deeply valuable: freedom. Freedom from chronic worry. Freedom to make decisions. Freedom to invest in yourself and your future. And as we think about how to walk through life with less stress and more choices, there's one more realization that's worth mentioning. It might not sound warm or fuzzy, but it's incredibly effective at protecting your peace of mind. It's the surprising truth that sometimes the best way to avoid 80% of life's unnecessary trouble is to adopt a little coolness, a little calm detachment, not apathy, but composure, a quiet refusal to be pulled into every storm. We've talked about finding peace in fewer friendships and the quiet power of money to smooth life's rough edges. Now, let's lean into something that might sound a little counterintuitive at first, especially if you're someone who wears your heart on your sleeve. It's the idea that sometimes adopting a certain degree of coolness, a calm detachment, can help us avoid 80% of life's unnecessary troubles. This isn't about being cold or uncaring, but rather about a conscious, almost strategic way of being in the world. I used to be, for lack of a better term, an emotional sponge. Every ripple in the pond of human interaction seemed to directly affect me. If someone was upset, I felt a tremor of their distress. If there was a conflict, I felt an almost immediate urge to step in, to mediate, to somehow fix it. My empathy, which I always saw as a strength, often felt like an open wound, constantly exposed to the world's various hurts and dramas. I'd spend hours replaying conversations, wondering if I'd said the wrong thing, if I'd accidentally offended someone, if I'd done enough to help. My personal boundaries were porous, almost non-existent, allowing every stray negative emotion from others to seep into my own peace of mind. This over-engagement, this almost compulsive need to be involved or to feel everything so deeply, led to endless anxieties. I found myself entangled in other people's arguments, taking on their burdens and getting swept up in their frustrations. My mental space became a crowded, noisy room, filled with echoes of other people's emotional turmoil. It was exhausting, truly. I'd finish a day feeling utterly drained, not from my own struggles, but from absorbing the struggles of everyone around me. My sleep was often disturbed by the unresolved dramas of friends or colleagues. My capacity for joy felt diminished, constantly overshadowed by the empathetic weight I carried. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to notice a pattern. The more I inserted myself into situations that weren't directly mine, the more trouble found its way to my doorstep. The more I emotionally invested in the opinions of others, especially those who weren't genuinely invested in me, the more hurt I felt. It became clear that my well-meaning intentions, my open-hearted approach, was inadvertently making me a magnet for unnecessary complications and heartache. This realization wasn't about becoming a cynic or building an impenetrable wall around my heart. It was about recognizing the power of emotional distance. It was about learning to differentiate between genuine compassion and self-sabotaging over-involvement. It's about understanding that while you can offer support and kindness, you don't have to carry the entire world's weight on your shoulders. Think of it like this. Imagine a raging river. You can stand on the bank, offer a rope to someone struggling, cheer them on, or even reach out a hand if they're close enough. But you don't jump into the rapids yourself if you don't have to, risking being swept away. A certain coolness or detachment is like knowing when to stay on the bank. It's the wisdom to observe without immediately absorbing. It's the ability to listen with empathy, but without automatically taking on the other person's emotional burden as your own. This kind of detachment allows you to react to situations with clarity rather than impulse. When you're not emotionally hijacked by every external stimulus, you can think more rationally, respond more effectively, and ultimately protect your inner calm. It means understanding that not every battle is yours to fight, not every complaint is yours to solve, and not every emotion expressed by someone else needs to become your emotion. For example, when someone starts gossiping or complaining endlessly, instead of getting drawn into their negativity, a detached approach allows you to simply listen, perhaps offer a neutral comment, and then gracefully disengage. You don't have to agree, you don't have to disagree vehemently, you just don't have to absorb. When a friend is in a minor drama, you can offer a listening ear and gentle advice without becoming the main character in their narrative. This preserves your energy and prevents you from being dragged into conflicts that have nothing to do with you. It's also about managing expectations, both your own and others. By not constantly trying to please everyone, by not always being the fixer or the responder, you subtly communicate your boundaries. People learn that while you are kind and supportive, you also respect your own space and time. This, surprisingly, often leads to greater respect from others, as they perceive you as someone who values themselves. The beauty of this detachment is the peace it brings. When you're not constantly reacting to external stimuli, you create an internal sanctuary. You gain control over your emotional landscape. The emotional dramas of others, which once felt like crashing waves, now become distant ripples. This newfound calm frees up immense mental and emotional bandwidth. Instead of being preoccupied with others' feelings and problems, you can direct that energy towards your own growth, your own passions, and your own true relationships. It doesn't mean you become a robot. You still care, you still love, you still feel. But you choose where and how to invest those emotions. You become more discerning, more deliberate, more protective of your inner world. And in doing so, you dramatically reduce the amount of unnecessary friction, misunderstanding, and heartache that comes into your life. You become less reactive and more intentional. And as we learn to navigate the world with a calmer, more detached approach, understanding where to invest our emotional energy, we also begin to see another harsh yet vital truth about life's landscape. It's the often uncomfortable reality that fairness in this world can often feel like a luxury, especially for those who are not strong enough to demand it. We've journeyed through the calm that comes with fewer friendships, the freeing stability of financial independence, and even touched on the quiet strength that can emerge from a little emotional detachment. Now, we arrive at a truth that often feels like a cold splash of reality, especially if, like me, you grew up believing in the inherent goodness of the world. It's the realization that fairness, in its purest form, often feels like a luxury, particularly for those who aren't strong enough to demand it. I remember being a kid and how fairness was everything. If my sister got an extra cookie, I wanted one too. If a game wasn't played by the rules, that tiny spark of injustice would flare up. This deeply rooted sense of what's right followed me into adulthood. I truly believed that if you worked hard, stayed honest, and played by the rules, life would return the favor, that justice would prevail, that good deeds would be rewarded, and that wrongs would eventually be righted. I clung to this belief like a fragile little lantern lighting my way forward. But slowly, that lantern began to dim. I saw coworkers who did less but climbed faster because they knew how to play the game, how to network, how to say the right things to the right people. I watched talented, hardworking individuals get overlooked, while louder, flashier personalities took the spotlight. I read stories, gut-wrenching, infuriating stories of injustice left unpunished, of victims never seeing closure, of systems rigged to protect the powerful while turning a blind eye to the vulnerable. And it wasn't just in the big, structural injustices. It showed up in the small things too. The customer service rep who brushes off your valid complaint because you're just one person. The small business crushed by a corporate giant. The soft-spoken voice that never gets heard over the noise. Each of those moments was a crack in the foundation of my belief in fairness. It wasn't that I stopped believing in justice altogether, but I started to see that justice isn't always given. Sometimes it has to be taken. Fairness isn't some universal force that automatically kicks in to restore balance. In reality, fairness is often a byproduct of power. Think about it. Who gets listened to? Who gets their needs met? Who gets the benefit of the doubt? More often than not, it's the people who have a voice, the ones with resources, the ones who carry a certain strength, whether that strength is financial, social, political, or even just the sheer resilience of will. If you're weak, if you're vulnerable, under-resourced, unsupported, your pleas for fairness often fall into silence. You become easy to overlook, to dismiss, to exploit. Your rights may exist on paper, but the ability to enforce them? That's another story entirely. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, especially if you value empathy, equality, and doing the right thing. It forces you to see the world not through the lens of how it should be, but how it really is. But this truth doesn't have to lead to cynicism. Instead, it can be the beginning of real empowerment. Because once you stop waiting for the world to treat you fairly, you start learning how to protect yourself when it doesn't. It means becoming your own advocate, your own defender, your own source of power. It means speaking up when needed, standing your ground, and arming yourself with whatever tools, skills, knowledge, community, resources you need to demand the treatment you deserve. Waiting around for fairness to arrive can be a long, disappointing journey. But building the strength to claim it, that's within your control. Take the workplace, for example. If you're a valuable employee with a unique skill set, you have more leverage to negotiate fair pay, better conditions, and real growth opportunities. But if you're easily replaced, your calls for fairness might be ignored. In your personal life, if you constantly allow others to cross your boundaries, if you don't speak up for your needs, you'll likely find yourself in relationship after relationship where fairness is missing. Not necessarily because the people around you are cruel, but because human nature often leans into what's easiest. If there are no consequences for taking advantage, the behavior tends to persist. So, the takeaway here isn't to abandon your sense of justice. It's to understand that achieving it requires agency. It means building your own strength, not to overpower others, but to ensure you're not overpowered. We can still dream of a fairer world, but in the meantime, we have to learn how to survive and thrive in one that isn't always fair. That means valuing self-reliance, knowing how to stand up for yourself, understanding that your voice carries more weight when it's backed by confidence, capability, and quiet resilience. This truth, while initially sobering, is ultimately liberating. It shifts your focus from waiting to acting, from hoping to doing, from wishing for fairness to becoming strong enough to create it. Because the stronger you are, in your mind, your skills, your spirit, the harder you are to silence, the less likely you are to be ignored, the more equipped you are to shape your world rather than simply react to it. And once we begin to truly understand how power and value function in the world, it naturally leads us to another uncomfortable but enlightening realization, one that touches the heart of our relationships. It's the often unspoken truth that, at their core, human connections are built on the exchange of value. We've peeled back layers tonight, exploring the quiet power of choosing our friendships, the undeniable utility of money, and even the strategic wisdom of a little detachment in a world that doesn't always play fair. Now, let's get very real, very honest, about something fundamental, something that underpins nearly every human connection, from the lightest acquaintance to the deepest bond. Relationships, at their core, are about the exchange of value. That might sound cold, maybe even cynical, especially if you, like me, were raised on stories of unconditional love and friendships that defy logic. I used to truly believe that the most meaningful relationships existed beyond the realm of give and take, a space of pure, selfless connection where value wasn't even part of the equation. I imagined friendships blooming like wildflowers, needing nothing more than laughter and a kind heart. I pictured partnerships rooted in some almost mystical understanding, where needs were met without question, purely out of love. And you know what? In rare, beautiful moments, that kind of connection does exist. It's like stumbling upon a rare, precious gem, But most of the relationships that shape our daily lives, those that define us in subtle, lasting ways, operate on a more practical, often unspoken principle. I learned this through a series of quiet, sometimes painful realizations. There were times I poured my energy, my time, my emotional support into people, convinced that generosity alone would build something unbreakable. I'd listen for hours. I'd offer help without hesitation. I'd cheer their victories, sit with them in their losses. And then, when I hit a low point, when I needed someone to simply listen or care, those same people often seemed preoccupied, distant, not really there. It wasn't always out of malice, but the imbalance was impossible to ignore. The value I was offering wasn't being returned, or at least not in a way that felt mutual. And then I saw it from the other side. There were people who reached out to me only when they needed something, a bit of advice, a favor, a shoulder to cry on. And once that need was fulfilled, they vanished, only to resurface when a new one appeared. It was a transactional rhythm, masked with polite smiles and occasional, "How have you been?" check-ins. They were seeking something specific from me, and I, perhaps a bit too trusting, was giving it without realizing the nature of the exchange. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't to say human connection lacks real emotion. Quite the opposite. But beneath the warmth and loyalty and shared memories, there's a quiet currency at work. Value in relationships isn't just about money or favors. It's broader. It's deeper. It includes emotional support, being there, truly listening, offering kindness, practical help, advice, assistance, shared resources, intellectual stimulation, thoughtful conversation, new perspectives, social connection, helping someone meet new people, feel seen, time and attention, simply showing up, staying engaged, shared experiences, memories, adventures, laughter, personal growth, pushing each other to be better, joy and humor, lightening each other's load. When relationships flourish, it's often because these values are exchanged, fluidly, generously, and over time, more or less equally. Not tit for tat, not a scorecard, but a sense that both people are showing up with something meaningful to give, and both are receiving something that nourishes them in return. Where things tend to go wrong is when that balance collapses. When one person keeps giving, emotionally, practically, energetically, while the other quietly receives, resentment builds. The relationship stops being a connection and starts becoming a drain. The giver becomes depleted. The taker, whether they realize it or not, leans too hard, and eventually, something breaks. Learning this didn't make me colder. It made me clearer. It helped me see where my energy was being appreciated and where it wasn't. It taught me to pause before pouring myself into something that didn't hold space for me in return. It didn't harden me. It sharpened me, and it freed me to love, support, and connect in ways that were more sustainable, more honest. It also made me more aware of what I bring. Am I showing up with value? Am I present, generous, dependable? It's not just about liking someone, it's about investing in the health of the relationship in ways that matter. Because when we understand that even the warmest, most beautiful relationships are built on some form of value exchange, not cold calculation, but mutual contribution, we build deeper, more resilient bonds. We stop expecting everything from people who give us little. We start cherishing those who show up again and again in ways that count. And when we see the dance of giving and receiving more clearly, we're better prepared for what comes next. Because kindness, no matter how genuine, can sometimes mean nothing at all if it's not backed by a certain strength. We've talked tonight about the delicate dance of relationships and the underlying currents of value exchange. Now, let's turn to a truth that might sting a little, especially for those of us who believe deeply in the power of compassion. It's the idea that kindness, no matter how pure its intention, can sometimes be utterly meaningless if it isn't backed by a certain degree of strength. I remember, from a very young age, being taught that being kind was paramount. Treat others as you want to be treated, my parents would say. Always help those in need. And I truly took those lessons to heart. I wanted to be the person who offered a helping hand, who spoke gently, who eased another's burden. I believed that my good intentions, my willingness to give and to forgive, would always be enough to create positive outcomes. I genuinely thought that a soft heart was the most powerful asset one could possess. But life, in its quiet, often brutal way, began to show me otherwise. I saw countless instances where genuine kindness was met not with gratitude, but with exploitation. I watched as gentle souls were taken advantage of, their generosity perceived as weakness. Their desire to help was misinterpreted as a lack of boundaries, and their willingness to understand was seen as an invitation to manipulate. It broke my heart to see good people, truly good people, consistently being hurt, financially drained, or emotionally exhausted, simply because their kindness wasn't paired with the ability to protect themselves or assert their needs. I remember a friend, one of the kindest people I've ever known, who lent money, time, and emotional support to various individuals who consistently failed to repay her, often disappearing only to reappear with another sob story. She kept giving, kept believing in the best in people, even as her own resources dwindled and her spirit frayed. Her kindness, in those instances, didn't create a positive change in the recipients. It enabled their dependency and their exploitation. It wasn't meaningless to her, as it came from a pure place, but in terms of practical outcome and impact, it achieved very little good for anyone involved. In fact, it often led to more harm for both her and the people she was trying to help. This isn't about blaming the kind-hearted, not at all. It's about a harsh reality. In a world where not everyone operates with integrity, pure intention alone is often not enough. Your kindness needs a foundation. It needs teeth. It needs boundaries. Otherwise, your beautiful gesture can simply become an open invitation for others to take advantage. Think of it this way. Imagine a doctor with the most compassionate heart who desperately wants to cure a patient. But if that doctor lacks the medical knowledge, the surgical skill, or the resources, like proper tools or medication, their compassion, no matter how profound, is not enough to save a life. Their kindness, in that context, becomes limited. Similarly, if you want to help someone struggling financially, but you yourself are barely scraping by, your empathy, while heartfelt, can't provide the concrete solution they might need. And if you try, you might end up drowning with them. Strength, in this context, isn't about aggression or dominance. It's a multifaceted concept. It can mean financial strength, the ability to help without jeopardizing your own stability; emotional strength, the capacity to set clear boundaries and say no when necessary without guilt; intellectual strength, the wisdom to discern genuine need from manipulation, to understand the long-term consequences of your actions; physical strength, the ability to protect yourself or others if a situation turns dangerous; social strength, the network and influence to advocate for someone effectively; self-respect, the deep understanding that your generosity has limits and that your well-being matters. When kindness is paired with strength, it becomes truly impactful. A strong person can offer help without being drained. They can be compassionate without being naive. They can give generously because they have the means and the wisdom to do so sustainably. They can stand up for others because they have the courage and the resources to face potential backlash. Their kindness is not just a soft whisper. It's a firm, effective force for good. This understanding encourages us to cultivate our own strength, not for selfish reasons, but so our kindness can be truly meaningful and effective. It urges us to build our resources, develop our discernment, and fortify our boundaries, not to become less empathetic, but to become more capable of expressing our empathy in a way that genuinely helps without harming ourselves in the process. It's about recognizing that a truly kind person isn't just someone with a good heart, but also someone with the capacity to protect that heart and to make their goodness count. It's a tough lesson, one that forces us to move beyond idealistic notions and embrace a more grounded reality. But it's a lesson that ultimately leads to more effective kindness and a more resilient self. And as we delve deeper into the importance of strength, particularly personal capability, it becomes glaringly clear that without it, you open yourself up to vulnerabilities that can be exploited in many ways. Because in a world that often operates on power dynamics, when you lack competence, almost anyone can bully you. We've explored how kindness needs strength to truly make an impact. And tonight, as the world outside settles into its quiet rhythm, let's talk about a raw truth that's often uncomfortable to face, but absolutely vital for navigating our lives effectively. It's the uncomfortable reality that when you lack competence, almost anyone can bully you. I used to believe that bullying was something that ended in schoolyards, that once you entered the adult world, people would be rational, respectful, and that merit would speak for itself. I genuinely thought that if I was a good person, did my best, and stayed out of trouble, I would be shielded from any form of intimidation or disrespect. My confidence, I figured, would come from my good intentions and my pleasant demeanor. I imagined a professional life where everyone was treated equally, based purely on their character. But then the subtle, insidious forms of adult bullying started to reveal themselves. It wasn't always a physical threat or overt aggression. Sometimes it was the condescending tone from a colleague who clearly knew more than I did about a specific task, leaving me feeling small and incompetent. It was the way a more experienced peer would dismiss my ideas in a meeting, not because they were bad, but because I hadn't yet earned the credibility to make them stick. It was the feeling of being overlooked for opportunities, not because I was a bad person, but because I simply didn't possess the required skills or knowledge to compete. I remember a particular incident early in my career. I was part of a team working on a complex project, and I was new to some of the technical aspects. Despite my best efforts and eagerness to learn, I found myself constantly struggling with certain tasks. A more senior team member, instead of offering patient guidance, would often make sarcastic remarks, subtly undermining my efforts in front of others. They'd sigh loudly when I asked a basic question, or take over my work without explanation, leaving me feeling humiliated and useless. In that moment, I realized it wasn't about my personality. It was about my lack of specific technical competence in that particular area. Because I couldn't perform that part of the job with confidence and expertise, I was vulnerable. My inability to quickly grasp complex concepts made me an easy target for their passive-aggressive behavior. I felt a deep, burning shame, not just from being treated poorly, but from the realization that my weakness was the very thing inviting this treatment. This extends far beyond the workplace. Think about it in everyday life. If you don't understand basic car maintenance, a mechanic might easily overcharge you or convince you to pay for unnecessary repairs. If you're not savvy about legal matters, you could be easily misled or taken advantage of. If you lack financial literacy, you might fall prey to predatory lending or bad investments. In each case, your lack of competence in a specific domain creates a vulnerability, a blind spot that others, consciously or unconsciously, can exploit. The bully isn't necessarily a malicious person. Sometimes, it's just someone who sees an easy opportunity to exert control or gain an advantage because you don't have the knowledge or skill to push back. The truth is, respect in society isn't primarily given, it's earned. And a huge part of earning that respect comes from demonstrating competence. When you know your stuff, when you can perform a task efficiently and effectively, when you understand the intricacies of a situation, you project an aura of confidence and capability. This isn't about being arrogant. It's about having a quiet, internal certainty in your abilities. And that certainty naturally deters those who might otherwise try to intimidate, manipulate, or disrespect you. When you are competent, your voice carries weight. Your opinions are listened to. Your contributions are valued. You become less susceptible to being dismissed, sidelined, or taken advantage of. You gain the power to negotiate, to assert your boundaries, and to command the treatment you deserve. The person who tries to bully you with condescension or dismissiveness will find their tactics ineffective because your work, your knowledge, or your skill speaks for itself. This isn't about being perfect at everything. It's about identifying the areas where you need to be strong, whether it's in your profession, your finances, your personal relationships, or even just in your ability to advocate for yourself. It's about committing to continuous learning and self-improvement in those critical areas. It's about recognizing that every moment you invest in acquiring a new skill, deepening your knowledge, or honing an existing talent, you are building an invisible shield around yourself. This realization was a powerful motivator for me. It shifted my focus from simply being nice to actively becoming capable. I started to see learning as a form of self-defense and skill development as a way to earn respect and autonomy. It meant dedicating time to truly master my craft, to understand complex systems, and to speak with authority based on knowledge, not just opinion. The peace that comes from competence is profound. It's the confidence that you can handle challenges. It's the ability to walk into any situation knowing you have something valuable to contribute and the capacity to defend your position. It's the quiet satisfaction of knowing that your worth is not dependent on others' approval, but on your demonstrable abilities. It's the ultimate antidote to feeling vulnerable and pushed around. And as we discuss the vital importance of acquiring competence and building that inner strength, it naturally brings us to two fundamental pillars of this journey, often intertwined yet distinctly different in their approach and immediate purpose. These are learning and making money, two separate mindsets, both absolutely crucial for navigating the modern world. We've just reflected on how essential competence is to navigate a world that doesn't always hand out respect freely. And as the night deepens and thoughts become clearer, let's talk about two fundamental activities that, while seemingly intertwined, often require entirely different ways of thinking: learning and making money. We often conflate them, believing that simply acquiring knowledge will automatically translate into financial success. But in reality, they are two distinct mindsets, each crucial in its own right. I remember my school years, and for a long time, my early adult life, being utterly consumed by the idea of learning. The goal was to absorb information, understand complex theories, ace exams, and collect qualifications. Success was measured by grades, by degrees, by the sheer volume of knowledge I could retain and articulate. The joy came from understanding something new, from connecting dots, from the intellectual satisfaction of mastering a subject. I believed that the more I learned, the more inherently valuable I became, and that this value would naturally translate into a comfortable, prosperous life. The world, I assumed, would simply reward my accumulated knowledge. But then, the real world hit, and it hit differently. I saw brilliant people, incredibly knowledgeable in their fields, struggling financially. They could recite theories, analyze data, and discuss philosophical concepts with breathtaking eloquence. Yet they found it challenging to translate that intellectual prowess into tangible income. Conversely, I observed individuals who might not have had a string of academic accolades, but who possessed an uncanny ability to identify opportunities, connect with people, and generate wealth. They were pragmatic, action-oriented, and seemed to understand the flow of resources in a way that my book-smart friends often didn't. This was a profound realization. The mindset for learning is fundamentally about acquisition and understanding, while the mindset for earning is about application and value creation. Think of it this way. Learning is like filling a well. You gather knowledge, facts, theories, and skills. You deepen your understanding of the world, and you enrich your mind. This is an invaluable pursuit. It expands your horizons, gives you perspective, and builds your capabilities. It's about personal growth, intellectual curiosity, and building a robust internal library. When you're in a learning mindset, you're asking, what can I absorb? How does this work? What new information can I integrate? The satisfaction comes from the aha moment of comprehension. But making money, earning, is a different beast altogether. It's not just about how much water you have in your well. It's about how effectively you can use that water to quench someone else's thirst, to irrigate a field, or to power a mill. It's about taking the knowledge and skills you've acquired and packaging them, presenting them, and applying them in a way that solves a problem for someone else, fulfills a need, or creates something valuable that others are willing to pay for. The earning mindset is outward focused. It's asking, what problem can I solve for others? What value can I provide? How can I communicate that value? How can I create a sustainable exchange? It involves understanding market needs, knowing how to communicate your worth, being willing to take calculated risks, and possessing the drive to execute. It's less about theoretical perfection and more about practical impact. For instance, someone might spend years learning every nuance of coding languages, understanding the deep architecture of software. That's a pure learning mindset. But the earning mindset comes when they say, okay, I know all this. Now, how can I use this to build an app that solves this specific problem for these people? Or how can I articulate my coding skills in a way that a company sees my immediate value and hires me? It's the bridge between accumulated knowledge and active contribution to the economy. I've seen many people get stuck in a perpetual learning loop, constantly acquiring more certifications, reading more books, attending more seminars, always feeling like they need one more thing before they can truly start. While admirable, this can become a form of procrastination. They've built an incredibly deep well, but they haven't learned how to effectively draw water from it and deliver it to the people who need it. Conversely, there are individuals who might not have gone through extensive formal education, but are incredibly adept at identifying needs and monetizing solutions. They might be street smart, entrepreneurial, and possess a keen understanding of human behavior and market dynamics. They learn what they need to learn, specifically, to solve a problem and create value. Their learning is often driven by the need to earn, making it highly targeted and practical. Both mindsets are essential. You can't earn sustainably without some foundation of knowledge and skill. And you can't truly thrive by just learning without applying that learning to create tangible value. The key is to understand when to be in which mode and how to effectively bridge the two. To learn, yes, but then to ask, now, how can I transform this knowledge into something that serves others and in turn generates income for me? It's about understanding that the world pays you not for what you know, but for what you do with what you know. It pays for solutions, for convenience, for entertainment, for products, for services. It pays for value delivered. And delivering that value requires a different kind of thinking than simply consuming information. This distinction empowers us. It helps us avoid the trap of endless learning without practical application. It encourages us to be strategic about our education, always keeping in mind how our knowledge can be leveraged to create real-world impact. It pushes us to connect the dots between our personal growth and our ability to contribute meaningfully to society and secure our own well-being. And as we talk about making that connection, about translating knowledge into tangible outcomes, it leads us directly to the crucial understanding of how to amplify our efforts and achieve success beyond what we could do alone. Because in this complex world, knowing how to seize opportunities and leverage the strength of others is a profound key to truly achieving success. We've talked about the distinct mindsets for learning and earning, and how applying our knowledge is key to creating value. Now, as the quiet hours of the night encourage deeper reflection, let's explore another vital truth for navigating this complex world. Knowing how to seize opportunities and, crucially, how to leverage the strength of others is often the path to true success. This isn't about being manipulative or taking advantage. It's about understanding the power of collaboration and interconnectedness. For a long time, I carried the deeply ingrained belief that true achievement was a solitary endeavor. The stories I admired often featured the lone genius, the tireless innovator toiling away in isolation, or the fiercely independent entrepreneur building an empire from scratch by themselves. I thought that to be truly accomplished, I had to do everything myself, from conception to execution. Relying on others felt like a sign of weakness, a failure to be self-sufficient. My mantra was, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And for a while, that served me, especially for smaller tasks where my individual effort was sufficient. But as my aspirations grew, as I started to envision bigger projects and more ambitious goals, I hit a wall, a very, very thick wall. I realized that my own time, my own energy, and my own skill set, no matter how dedicated I was, were finite. There simply weren't enough hours in the day or enough knowledge in my head to accomplish everything I dreamed of on my own. I found myself overwhelmed, burned out, and consistently falling short of my own expectations. The sheer scale of what I wanted to achieve felt impossible, dwarfed by my limited individual capacity. This was a humbling moment, a quiet admission that the lone wolf mentality, while romantic, was ultimately limiting. It forced me to look outward, to observe those who were truly achieving monumental things. And what I saw was a clear pattern. The most successful individuals weren't necessarily doing everything themselves. Instead, they were masters at connecting, delegating, collaborating, and strategically utilizing the unique strengths and resources of others. They were building ecosystems around themselves. Think about any major achievement in history, any grand project, any thriving business. Was it built by one person alone in a vacuum? Almost never. It's always a culmination of diverse talents, shared resources, collective knowledge, and coordinated effort. The smart person, the truly effective one, understands that their own individual capacity, while valuable, is dramatically amplified when connected to others. This concept of borrowing strength isn't about being lazy. It's about efficiency and strategic resource allocation. It's recognizing that someone else might possess a skill that complements yours perfectly, or has knowledge that can save you years of trial and error. It's about leveraging someone's network to reach an audience you couldn't access alone. It's about tapping into someone's financial resources to fund a venture you couldn't start on your own. It's about recognizing that the sum is far greater than its individual parts. For example, if you're a brilliant writer but terrible at marketing, trying to do both alone will be an uphill battle. But if you collaborate with a marketing expert, you borrow their strength in promotion, allowing your writing to reach a wider audience. If you have an innovative product idea but lack the capital to produce it, finding an investor means you borrow their financial strength to bring your vision to life. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the wisdom to recognize your own limitations and to intelligently seek out complementary strengths. This also extends to seizing opportunities. Opportunities often don't just land in your lap. They come disguised as connections, as invitations, as fleeting moments that require quick thinking, and often the ability to engage with others. The person who is open to collaboration, who actively builds a network, who can articulate their vision in a way that inspires others to contribute their strength, is the one who can truly capitalize on these moments. They don't just see a problem, they see a potential team to solve it. They don't just see a good idea, they see the collective effort needed to make it a reality. Embracing this mindset required me to shed a lot of ego. It meant admitting I didn't have all the answers. It meant trusting others with parts of my vision. It meant learning to communicate effectively, to build rapport, and to foster genuine relationships based on mutual benefit and respect. It meant understanding that the strongest leaders aren't those who do everything, but those who can inspire, empower, and orchestrate the efforts of many. The peace that comes from this understanding is immense. You no longer feel the crushing weight of having to be everything, to know everything, to do everything yourself. You realize you're part of a larger ecosystem and that your contribution, combined with the contributions of others, can create something truly magnificent. It transforms the daunting mountain into a series of achievable climbs, each supported by different hands. It allows you to focus your energy on your unique strengths, knowing that your weaknesses can be covered by the strengths of your collaborators. It shifts the paradigm from self-sufficiency to intersufficiency, a much more realistic and powerful way to navigate the complexities of the modern world. It's a testament to the idea that true success isn't just about what you achieve, but how you achieve it, often with the collective wisdom and power of those around you. And as we discuss the power of collaboration and strategic partnerships, it inevitably brings us to a deeply personal and often challenging aspect of life, the concept of honor and integrity. Because while all this talk of leverage and strategy is crucial for material success, it also begs the question of what kind of person you become in the process. This leads us to the crucial truth that honor won't feed you, but without it, you live a life that's barely worth living. We've explored the pragmatic side of life tonight, the calm that comes with curated friendships, the power of money, the wisdom found in detachment, the necessity of competence, and the genius of leveraging other people's strengths. These are tools for navigating the world and achieving tangible success. But as we sit here in the quiet of the night, letting these thoughts settle, it's time to talk about something that goes beyond practicality, something that touches the very core of who we are: honor. Because while honor might not put food on the table or pay the bills, without it, you're left with a life that's hardly worth living. I remember vividly moments in my younger years when the temptation to cut corners, to take the easy way out, to compromise my values for a quick gain, felt overwhelmingly strong. Whether it was exaggerating a resume, bending the truth to dodge a tough conversation, or letting someone else take the fall for something I was partially responsible for, the path of least resistance was always there, calling. The world at times seemed to reward the ruthless, those who chased profit and power above everything else, those who treated honesty like an optional accessory. There was a period when I genuinely wondered if my commitment to integrity was just a naive handicap in an unforgivingly competitive world. Would I be left behind if I kept insisting on doing the right thing? Would sticking to my principles make me weak? But then, as I watched others, and even experienced for myself, those fleeting moments of choosing compromise, something quietly disturbing began to happen. It wasn't always about immediate consequences, though they sometimes showed up. It was an internal erosion, a slow, subtle wearing away of my sense of self. Every time a line was crossed, every time the truth was twisted, a small part of me felt smaller. A quiet voice would whisper, "Is this really who you are? Is this the person you want to be?" That feeling of inner dissonance, of drifting away from my own values, was far more damaging than any external failure. It showed up as a dull sense of shame, an unease that no amount of success could cover. Sleep became harder, thoughts got louder, joy felt more and more out of reach. Outwardly, I might have gained something, but inside, I was losing a much bigger battle with myself. At its core, honor is about integrity. It means aligning your actions with your values, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something. It means keeping your word even when no one is watching. It means treating others with respect, even when they haven't earned it. It means owning your mistakes, even when it's painful. It's the quiet, enduring strength to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. This isn't just theory, it's a practical blueprint for a life that feels real. When you live with honor, you build something far more valuable than money or fleeting approval: self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of real confidence. It's the ability to look yourself in the eye and know you stayed true to your principles. It's the quiet power of knowing your word matters, your actions reflect your beliefs, and you actually stand for something. Think about the moments in life when you've truly felt proud of yourself. Was it when you made a lot of money or gained influence? Or was it when you stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves? When you admitted a mistake and made it right? When you walked away from something tempting but unethical? Those moments are the building blocks of honor. They leave behind a sense of inner peace that no external reward can replace. Without honor, life turns into a performance, just a series of calculated moves to manipulate or extract something from others. Sure, you might win things, but what's the cost? The cost of real connection, the cost of trust, and ultimately, the cost of your own soul. When people see you as untrustworthy, as someone who doesn't live with integrity, doors start to close, opportunities disappear, real relationships become impossible. You might win some battles, but you lose the war for a meaningful life. The barely living part of this truth hits hard. It's a warning about a life without depth, without real connection, without authenticity. Imagine constantly second-guessing your motives, always watching your back, living in a web of transactional relationships because you've never earned deep trust. That's a lonely, hollow life, no matter how much money you make or how many trophies you collect. Honor is your internal compass, helping you steer through life's moral complexities. It's the anchor that holds you steady when temptation and pressure swirl around you. It gives your actions meaning, gives your struggles purpose, and gives your life dignity. It's the quiet strength that lets you sleep well at night, knowing you stayed true to yourself and treated others with respect. It's what makes you a person of substance, not just a shadow chasing shallow winds. This truth calls us to prioritize character, to build reputations not just for competence, but for unshakable integrity. It reminds us that even if the world doesn't immediately reward honor, the inner rewards are deep and lasting. It's the ultimate investment in yourself and in the legacy you leave behind. And speaking of truth and the power it holds, there's one more difficult but essential insight. The truth might not make everyone love you, but it will always show you who truly does. We've reflected deeply tonight on what it means to live with honor, to hold on to our integrity even when it's challenging. And as we continue this quiet conversation, let's confront another profound, sometimes painful, but ultimately liberating truth. The truth itself might not make you loved by everyone, but it will certainly reveal who truly loves you. I used to have this unwavering belief that honesty was always, unequivocally the best policy, not just morally, but socially. I thought that if I was always forthright, always spoke my mind with sincerity, and always presented the unvarnished facts, people would appreciate my transparency and trustworthiness. I imagined that clarity and truthfulness would naturally foster deeper connections, because who wouldn't want to be around someone so genuine? I believed that the path to being liked was paved with complete candor. But life, in its subtle and often surprising ways, taught me a different lesson. I started to notice that sometimes, when I spoke a difficult truth, when I shared an unpopular opinion, or when I simply stated a fact that contradicted someone's comfortable delusion, the reaction wasn't always appreciation. Sometimes it was discomfort. Sometimes it was defensiveness. And sometimes, heartbreakingly, it was outright rejection. People would recoil, become distant, or even actively avoid me. The truth, instead of drawing them closer, seemed to push them away. I remember a specific instance when a close friend was making a series of choices that I genuinely believed were detrimental to their well-being. Out of deep care and with a sincere desire to help, I gently but firmly spoke my truth. I pointed out the potential pitfalls, expressed my concerns, and offered a different perspective. My intention was pure, rooted in genuine affection. But the response was immediate defensiveness, followed by a slow, painful withdrawal. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted affirmation, not challenging reality. In that moment, the truth I offered, born of love, became a wedge between us. And it hurt. It made me question whether honesty was always worth the potential cost. This is the challenging paradox of truth. It's a mirror, not a comfortable blanket, and not everyone wants to look into that mirror. Many prefer the comforting illusion of what they want to believe, or what makes them feel safe, or what aligns with their carefully constructed narratives. When you speak the truth, especially a truth that is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or exposes a hidden reality, you disrupt that comfort. You shatter the illusion, and some people will resent you for it. They will prefer the person who tells them what they want to hear, even if it's a lie, over the person who offers them the painful but ultimately liberating reality. So no, the truth might not make you universally popular. It won't win you a popularity contest. It won't guarantee that everyone will like you or want to be around you. In fact, it might do the opposite. It might make some people uncomfortable. It might reveal insecurities. It might expose their own lack of integrity or courage. And when faced with that reflection, some will choose to turn away from you, the messenger, rather than confront the message itself. However, this is precisely where the profound power of truth lies. Because while it might drive away those who prefer illusion, it will cement your bonds with those who value authenticity above all else. The people who stay, the people who listen, the people who appreciate your honesty even when it's difficult, those are the ones who genuinely love you. They are the ones who value your integrity, your courage, and your commitment to reality. They are the ones who see the long-term benefit of truth, even when it stings in the short term. These are the relationships built on a foundation of trust so deep that it can withstand the sometimes harsh winds of reality. They understand that genuine care often involves uncomfortable conversations. They know that true connection means seeing each other for who you truly are, flaws and all, with no illusions. The people who can sit with your truth, even when it challenges them, are the ones who are truly in your corner. They are the ones who want you to grow, to be better, and to live in alignment with reality, not just fleeting comfort. This understanding liberated me from the exhausting burden of trying to be palatable to everyone. It shifted my focus from seeking universal approval to cultivating genuine, deeply rooted connections. It allowed me to prioritize authenticity over popularity. It helped me recognize that the discomfort of speaking a truth is a small price to pay for the profound peace of living in alignment with myself and attracting people who truly value that alignment. The peace that comes from embracing truth is immeasurable. It's the freedom from pretense, from constantly managing perceptions, from the weight of unspoken realities. It's the quiet confidence that you are living authentically, and that the people who surround you are there because they appreciate the real you, not a carefully constructed facade. It simplifies life, cutting through the noise and allowing genuine connections to flourish. And as we discuss the wisdom of embracing difficult truths and the kind of discernment it fosters, it leads us directly to another crucial principle for navigating the world, especially in our interactions with others. It's the simple but powerful truth. Don't argue with a fool, because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. We've just faced the liberating, albeit sometimes uncomfortable truth about how honesty reveals truest connections. Now, as our quiet conversation continues into the depths of the night, let's talk about a golden rule for preserving your peace of mind and your dignity in this often noisy world. Don't argue with a fool, because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. I used to believe that every disagreement was an opportunity for logical debate, a chance to present facts, to reason, and to ultimately persuade someone to see the truth. I imagined that with enough evidence and calm articulation, I could always win an argument, or at least reach a mutual understanding. My academic background, perhaps, instilled in me this faith in pure rationality. I thought that if my points were sound and my delivery clear, then victory in an intellectual sparring match was inevitable. I even felt a moral obligation at times to correct misinformation or challenge illogical thinking. But then I encountered fools, and I don't mean people who are unintelligent necessarily. I mean individuals who are immune to logic, impervious to facts, and whose primary objective isn't understanding, but winning, no matter the cost to truth. They operate from a place of stubbornness, ego, or just a deeply ingrained habit of irrationality. I remember countless hours spent passionately presenting data, carefully constructing arguments, only to be met with shifting goalposts, personal attacks, or outright denial of reality. I recall a particularly frustrating argument with someone about a widely accepted scientific fact. I provided research, cited credible sources, explained the underlying principles, but no matter what I presented, they responded with anecdotal evidence, conspiracy theories, or simply a dismissive wave of the hand. The more I tried to be logical, the more irrational they became. They would interrupt, raise their voice, or twist my words. It quickly devolved from a debate into a chaotic shouting match, and I found myself feeling utterly drained, furious, and bewildered. Not only did I fail to convince them, but I felt dirtied by the exchange. I had allowed myself to be pulled into their arena, on their terms, and in their preferred style of engagement, which was utterly devoid of reason. This experience, and many like it, taught me a crucial lesson. You cannot win an argument against someone who isn't playing by the rules of logic, respect, or even basic reality. When you engage with a fool, in this context, someone who operates outside rational bounds, you're stepping onto their battlefield. They don't fight fair. They don't care about facts. Their experience isn't in critical thinking. It's in creating chaos, frustrating opponents, and wearing down anyone who tries to engage them rationally. They are masters of distraction, deflection, and personal insults. Your logical arguments, your well-researched facts, your calm demeanor, these are your strengths. But in their world, these strengths are weaknesses. They'll use your commitment to reason against you. They'll exploit your desire for a fair debate. They'll drag the conversation into the mud, where their experience in mud wrestling, their comfort with irrationality and personal attacks will inevitably give them the upper hand. You end up exhausted, frustrated, and feeling less intelligent for even having engaged. Your valuable time and emotional energy are squandered. This isn't about intellectual snobbery. It's about strategic self-preservation. It's about recognizing when an interaction is no longer productive and choosing to disengage. It's about understanding that not every opinion needs to be corrected, not every challenge needs to be accepted, and not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes the smartest move is to simply walk away, to protect your peace, and to preserve your energy for battles that actually matter, or conversations that can actually lead to something meaningful. Learning to identify a foolish argument, one where the other party is unwilling to listen, learn, or engage rationally, is a skill. It frees you from the burden of feeling obligated to enlighten everyone. It gives you permission to protect your mental space from unproductive negativity. It's an act of self-respect. The peace that comes from this discernment is immense. Imagine no longer feeling the need to correct every piece of misinformation you hear, or to engage with every inflammatory comment on social media, or to debate every illogical opinion voiced by a relative. You regain control over your attention and your emotional state. You create boundaries around your intellectual and emotional energy, reserving it for truly constructive exchanges. This doesn't mean you avoid difficult conversations entirely, or that you never stand up for what's right. But it teaches you to choose your battles wisely. It teaches you to recognize the signs of a futile argument, the shifting goalposts, the personal attacks, the blatant disregard for facts, the circular reasoning. When you see these signs, you learn to gracefully exit, saving yourself from unnecessary stress and intellectual degradation. Your silence in such moments becomes an act of power, not submission. It's a statement that your time and mental clarity are too valuable to be wasted. It's a subtle form of wisdom, a recognition that not all engagements are equal, and that some are designed purely to drain you. By choosing not to engage, you maintain your intellectual integrity, your emotional balance, and your sense of dignity. You leave the fool to their own devices, and you preserve your precious energy for pursuits that genuinely matter. And as we talk about the power of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, it naturally leads us to a broader, even more critical skill for navigating every facet of life. Because in this complex world, wise communication is often more valuable than any degree you could ever earn. We've just explored the quiet power of knowing when not to engage in futile arguments, preserving our peace and dignity. Now, as our late-night conversation turns toward the practicalities of navigating the world, let's talk about a skill that, in my experience, consistently outweighs formal qualifications. Wise communication is often more valuable than any degree you could ever earn. For years, I believed that my academic achievements and the knowledge I had accumulated were my most valuable assets. I thought my diplomas and certifications were the golden tickets to opportunity, respect, and success. I assumed that with the right credentials, the right theories, and the right answers, doors would automatically open. I focused intensely on what I knew, convinced that intelligence and technical expertise alone would be enough to get by and even thrive. But then I stepped out of the academic world and into the real world, the world of workplaces, social dynamics, and complex human interactions. And what I quickly realized was that while my degrees did open some initial doors, they didn't guarantee long-term success or even basic understanding. I saw brilliant people struggle to communicate their ideas, their innovations misunderstood or dismissed. I watched highly educated individuals flounder in group settings because they couldn't express their thoughts clearly, listen effectively, or handle interpersonal dynamics. On the other hand, I saw people with far less formal education, yet with an uncanny ability to connect, persuade, and navigate social situations, achieve extraordinary influence and success. This was a profound, humbling realization. How you communicate shapes how people see you, how they respond to you, and what opportunities come your way. It's not just about what you know, it's about how well you share what you know, how deeply you listen, and how effectively you build rapport. Think about it. You might have the most revolutionary idea in the world, but if you can't explain it clearly, concisely, and persuasively to investors, teammates, or clients, it may never leave the realm of ideas. It might wither, not because it lacked value, but because it lacked communication. Likewise, you could be an expert in your field, but if you can't explain complex information in a way others understand, or if your tone or delivery alienates people, your expertise might be overlooked or even resented. Wise communication isn't just about speaking well. It's a holistic skill set that includes active listening, truly hearing others, not just waiting for your turn to speak, grasping their needs, concerns, and perspectives. This builds trust and makes others feel valued. Clarity and conciseness, saying what you mean in a simple, direct way, avoiding jargon and unnecessary complexity, getting to the point without losing your message's impact. Empathy and emotional intelligence, understanding others' emotions and adjusting your approach accordingly. Knowing when to be firm, gentle, or silent. Communicating in a way that suits the person and the moment. Persuasion and influence, presenting ideas in a way that moves people, not through manipulation, but by inspiring genuine engagement and action. Conflict resolution, navigating disagreements with grace, seeking common ground, diffusing tension and fostering cooperation instead of division. Nonverbal cues, being mindful of body language, tone, and facial expressions, and how these shape your message. I learned all this the hard way. Early in my career, I would present ideas in a logical, academic style, dense with data and theory. I thought I was being thorough, but often I'd see blank stares or feel a disconnect. Eventually, I started observing skilled communicators. They used stories, analogies, simple language. They checked for understanding. They read the room. They didn't just talk, they connected. They weren't just delivering information, they were building relationships and influencing outcomes. That realization changed everything for me. I began to see that a degree might get you in the door, but communication is what gets you the job, earns the promotion, builds the partnership, and resolves the conflict. It's the silent force that either lifts your career or holds it back. It shapes your relationships, your ability to advocate for yourself, and your effectiveness as a teammate or leader. There's a deep peace that comes with mastering communication. You walk through life with more confidence, knowing you can express yourself clearly, handle hard conversations, and build bridges instead of walls. You experience fewer misunderstandings and deeper, more authentic connections. You feel heard, and you in turn truly hear others. This ease in human interaction, this grace in navigating conversation, becomes a steady source of calm and strength. Of course, it's a lifelong practice. Every conversation is a chance to learn. But investing in your communication, refining it daily, striving to be more empathetic and clear, will give you returns far greater than any diploma. It's the ultimate soft skill that turns into hard-earned power. And as we reflect on the impact of our everyday interactions, it leads us to a quiet, often overlooked truth about our inner lives. Happiness is not a prize waiting at the end of the struggle. It's a state of being, a path to be nurtured right now. We've journeyed through many practical truths tonight, from communication to competence. But now, as the late hour invites a deeper, more personal reflection, let's talk about something many of us chase our entire lives: happiness. And the crucial, liberating truth about it: happiness is a state of being, not a prize waiting at the finish line. For so long, I lived with an unspoken, deeply ingrained belief that happiness was something I had to earn. It was a destination, a reward that would finally be bestowed upon me once I achieved certain milestones. I told myself, I'll be truly happy when I get that promotion, or I'll finally find peace when I buy that house, or once I reach that financial goal, then I can relax and be happy. I envisioned happiness as a gleaming trophy, waiting at the end of a long, arduous race. My life became a relentless pursuit of these external markers, a never-ending checklist of achievements. So I pushed myself. I worked harder, saved more, strived relentlessly for the next big thing. And each time I reached a goal, there would be a brief, exhilarating surge of satisfaction, a fleeting sense of triumph. But then, almost immediately, the "then I'll be happy" goalpost would shift. A new, higher target would emerge, and the chase would begin anew. The happiness I thought I had earned would slip through my fingers like water, leaving me feeling strangely empty, despite my accomplishments. I was constantly looking ahead, perpetually postponing true contentment. The present moment, with all its small joys and quiet beauty, was merely a stepping stone to a future, elusive happiness. This endless pursuit led to a profound sense of exhaustion and dissatisfaction. I realized I was living in a perpetual state of not yet. My mind was always focused on what was missing, what still needed to be done, what future achievement would finally unlock that mythical state of bliss. I wasn't truly present in my own life, always rushing through today to get to a tomorrow that never quite delivered on its promise of ultimate happiness. The journey itself felt like a means to an end, rather than something to be experienced and appreciated. The breakthrough came when I started observing truly contented people. They weren't necessarily the richest, the most successful in conventional terms, or the ones with the fewest problems. In fact, many faced significant challenges. But what distinguished them was their ability to cultivate moments of joy and peace in the midst of their lives, not waiting for perfect conditions. They found beauty in small things: a warm cup of coffee, a quiet morning, a genuine conversation. They practiced gratitude for what they had, rather than constantly yearning for what they lacked. They understood that happiness wasn't an endpoint. It was woven into the fabric of daily existence. This shifted my entire perspective. I began to understand that happiness isn't something you get. It's something you practice. It's not a prize that life bestows upon you after you've jumped through enough hoops. Instead, it's a mindset, a way of engaging with the world, a series of choices you make every single day, regardless of your external circumstances. It's about finding contentment in the process, in the journey, in the simple act of being alive. It's about learning to appreciate the small victories, the quiet moments of connection, the beauty in the mundane. It's about being present, truly present, in whatever you're doing, whether it's eating a meal, walking in nature, or spending time with loved ones. It's about consciously shifting your focus from what's missing to what's abundant. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges or pretending everything is perfect. Life will always have its share of difficulties, disappointments, and struggles. But the key is to learn how to experience these without sacrificing your capacity for joy and peace. It's about developing resilience, a quiet strength that allows you to weather the storms while still finding pockets of sunshine. For me, this meant deliberately incorporating practices that fostered happiness now. It meant pausing to truly savor my morning coffee, rather than gulping it down while already thinking about the day's tasks. It meant spending quality, undistracted time with loved ones, rather than constantly checking my phone. It meant practicing gratitude each day, acknowledging the blessings, big and small, that were already present in my life. It meant finding joy in the effort, in the process of working towards a goal, rather than only in the outcome. The peace that comes from this realization is profound. You're no longer dependent on external factors for your well-being. You become the architect of your own emotional state. The constant pressure to achieve, to acquire, to become something else to be happy begins to dissipate. You realize that happiness is a choice available to you right now, a muscle you can strengthen with daily practice. You learn to live enough, to find sufficiency in the present, rather than perpetually running on a treadmill toward an ever-receding finish line. It's a liberation from the tyranny of conditional happiness. It allows you to embrace the messy, imperfect reality of life while still finding moments of genuine, heartfelt contentment. It's about building an inner reservoir of joy that can sustain you, regardless of what the external world throws your way. And as we discuss this profound inner strength, the ability to cultivate happiness as a state of being, even amidst life's challenges, it naturally brings us to the final, powerful truth in our conversation tonight. It's the quiet understanding that the strong aren't those who never get tired. They're just the ones who don't complain. We've reached the final truth in our conversation tonight, a quiet, profound insight that ties together much of what we've discussed about navigating life with resilience and inner peace. It's the understanding that the strong aren't those who never get tired. They're just the ones who don't complain. For a long time, I held a somewhat naive image of strength. I pictured people who seemed to effortlessly handle every challenge, whose energy never wavered, whose smiles were always bright, no matter the circumstances. I believed true strength meant being immune to fatigue, to stress, to disappointment. And when I felt tired, when I felt overwhelmed, when I felt the urge to vent my frustrations, I saw it as a personal failing, a sign that I wasn't strong enough. I'd look at others, seemingly unburdened, and wonder how they did it. I'd internalize my struggles, feeling ashamed of my own weariness, assuming that everyone else was sailing through life with boundless energy. But life, with its endless array of challenges, soon taught me a different reality. The more I interacted with truly accomplished, truly resilient people, the more I began to see beneath the surface. I started noticing the subtle signs of their struggles. the quiet moments of contemplation, the lines of fatigue around their eyes that would momentarily appear before they recomposed themselves. I realized that the people I admired for their unwavering resolve weren't superhuman. They were just incredibly disciplined in how they responded to their own exhaustion and difficulties. They felt the same pressures, the same weariness, the same moments of doubt as anyone else. But their reaction was profoundly different. I remember a mentor of mine, a person who seemed to juggle a demanding career, a vibrant family life, and numerous philanthropic efforts with incredible grace. I often found myself marveling at their seemingly infinite energy. One late evening, after a particularly grueling day for both of us, I casually remarked, "I'm so exhausted. I don't know how you keep going like this every day." They paused, a slight smile playing on their lips, and simply said, "Oh, I get tired, very tired. I just choose not to talk about it." That simple sentence was a revelation. It wasn't that they didn't feel the fatigue. It was that they didn't express it in a way that drained their own energy or the energy of those around them. This is the essence of this truth. Strength isn't the absence of struggle or fatigue. It's the disciplined management of your response to it. It's about understanding that complaining, while sometimes a natural human impulse, often serves to amplify your discomfort, reinforce negativity, and drain your own precious energy without actually solving the problem. When you complain, you're not just venting, you're often reliving the negative experience, inviting others to wallow in it with you, and potentially projecting an image of helplessness. The strong, therefore, are not those who are immune to hardship. They are the ones who acknowledge their fatigue privately. They feel it, they recognize it, but they process it internally or through constructive channels, like strategizing a solution, resting, or talking to a trusted few who can offer genuine support, not just commiseration. Focus on solutions, not problems. Instead of dwelling on what's going wrong, they shift their mental energy towards what can be done to improve the situation. Maintain a positive outward demeanor, not as a facade, but as a conscious choice to uphold morale, project resilience, and maintain a constructive atmosphere. Understand the impact of their words. They know that complaining can spread negativity and diminish their own perceived capability. Practice self-compassion without self-pity. They allow themselves to feel tired, to take breaks, but they don't get stuck in a victim mentality. Embrace silence as a form of progress. They understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is silently push through, demonstrating resolve through action rather than words. This doesn't mean bottling up all emotions. There's a vital difference between healthy processing of feelings, which might involve talking to a therapist, a close confidant, or journaling, and habitual complaining, which often leads to stagnation and a victim mindset. The strong find constructive ways to deal with their inner landscape rather than broadcasting their discomfort to the world. Learning to not complain was one of the hardest shifts I've ever made. It required a conscious effort to reframe my thoughts, to catch myself before I spiraled into negativity, and to redirect my energy towards gratitude or problem solving. But the rewards have been immense. The peace that comes from this practice is profound. You feel a deeper sense of control over your own mental and emotional state. You stop giving away your power by dwelling on what's wrong. You develop an inner resilience that allows you to face adversity with a quiet dignity. You become a source of strength for yourself and, by extension, for others. People gravitate towards those who exude calm competence, not those who constantly lament their circumstances. This final truth encourages us to embrace a mature form of strength, one that acknowledges the very human experience of exhaustion and struggle, but chooses a path of quiet perseverance and constructive action. It's about growing up, understanding that life will throw curveballs, and deciding that you will meet them with a steady gaze and a quiet determination, rather than with a loud lament. It's about realizing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply to keep moving forward, one silent step at a time, without needing to announce your weariness to the world. And in that quiet resilience, you find true strength. So, we've journeyed deep into the quiet truths of modern survival tonight. We've talked about cultivating peace through fewer, deeper friendships, understanding money's liberating power, the wisdom of strategic detachment, the shield of competence, the art of leveraging others' strengths, the non-negotiable value of honor, the revealing mirror of truth, the peace of avoiding futile arguments, the power of wise communication, and finally, the quiet resilience of those who don't complain. The world out there isn't always easy. In fact, it can be pretty tough. But here's the most important takeaway. You don't have to make it even harder for yourself. The moment you start to understand the game, to grasp these underlying rules of how things truly work, not how you wish they would work, but how they do, you've already won half the battle. You move from being a passive participant, susceptible to every twist and turn, to becoming an active player, capable of navigating the currents with intent and confidence. This isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming wise. It's about trading naive optimism for grounded realism, which paradoxically often leads to far more genuine peace and effective action. These aren't rules to make you cold or ruthless. They are insights to make you stronger, smarter, and more discerning, so that your kindness can be truly impactful, your efforts more fruitful, and your journey through life more peaceful. They help you protect your energy, invest wisely in your relationships, and build a foundation of inner strength that can weather any storm. As you reflect on these 15 rules, which ones resonate most deeply with you right now? And what's one small thing you feel ready to change or embrace to make your own life a little more aligned with these truths? If these insights have sparked something within you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this conversation valuable, please consider subscribing to join me on this ongoing journey of understanding life and understanding ourselves.